Have you ever felt the suffocating weight of saying yes when every fiber of your being screamed no? This silent internal conflict, this subtle surrender of your own time and energy, is a universal human struggle. It chips away at our peace, drains our vitality, and often leaves us wondering why we feel so overwhelmed and resentful, stretched thin by demands we never truly agreed to bear deep down. We navigate a world that relentlessly pulls at our attention, blurring the critical lines between genuine obligation and external imposition. This culture of constant availability, the unspoken expectation to always agree, to always accommodate, quietly depletes our most valuable non-renewable resources, our time, our focus, and our emotional energy. It's a slow erosion of self, often unnoticed until burnout strikes. But what if this simple act of refusal, the utterance of no, wasn't merely a practical tool for time management, but a profound act of wisdom? What if ancient philosophers, masters of understanding human nature and the pursuit of a virtuous life, held the keys to wielding this word not as a weapon, but as a shield for the soul? Imagine unlocking this forgotten power. This seemingly negative word, when employed with intention and clarity, transforms into a powerful declaration of self-respect. It becomes the invisible boundary protecting our inner citadel, a concept Stoic thinkers cherished, that sacred internal space where our reason, values, and tranquility reside, untouched by the chaos of the external world. This is where true strength lies, guarded by discernment. Join us as we delve into the timeless wisdom that illuminates why setting firm, yet compassionate, boundaries is not selfish, but essential. We will explore how embracing the philosophy behind no can liberate us from cycles of people-pleasing and resentment, guiding us toward a life lived with greater authenticity, purpose, and profound inner peace, finally aligning our actions with our deepest values. The difficulty often stems from a deep-seated fear of disapproval or conflict. We are social creatures, wired for connection and acceptance. Saying no can feel like risking that connection, potentially causing disappointment or friction in relationships we value. This fear can paralyze us, leading us to prioritize others' perceived needs or desires above our own well-being and commitments. Furthermore, societal conditioning often equates agreeableness with kindness. We are subtly taught that being helpful and accommodating at all times is virtuous, while setting boundaries might be perceived as selfish or uncooperative. This conditioning creates internal dissonance when our need for self-preservation clashes with the learned imperative to always please others, regardless of the personal cost involved. Let's turn to the wisdom of Stoicism. Thinkers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius emphasize the preciousness of time and mental energy. They argued that our primary duty is to live virtuously and rationally, focusing our efforts on what is truly important and within our control. Saying yes indiscriminately scatters our finite resources, preventing us from fulfilling our essential duties. For the Stoics, saying no is not about rejection, but about selection. It is choosing where to invest your energy wisely. It's about preserving your inner tranquility, your apatheia, by refusing to let external demands dictate your actions or disturb your rational mind. Protecting your time allows you to cultivate virtue, engage in meaningful work, and contribute effectively where it matters most. Think of your commitments like tending a garden. You have limited water and sunlight, your time and energy. If you try to nourish every possible seed, every weed that sprouts, your intended flowers will wither. Stoicism teaches us to identify our most important plants, our core responsibilities, values, and goals, and dedicate our resources primarily to them. This aligns with maintaining integrity. When we consistently say yes against our better judgment or capacity, we often fail to follow through properly, damaging our reputation and trustworthiness. A well-considered no, delivered respectfully, preserves our integrity. It signals that our yes, when given, is genuine and can be relied upon, strengthening relationships in the long run. Echoes of this principle resonate within Kantian ethics, particularly the concept of treating humanity as an end in itself, never merely as a means. While Kant focused on how we treat others, this idea can be introspectively applied. Constantly sacrificing your own needs, values, and well-being solely for others' convenience treats yourself as merely a means to their ends. Setting boundaries, saying no when necessary, is an affirmation of your own intrinsic worth and autonomy. It declares that your time, energy, and well-being have value independent of their utility to others. This isn't selfishness, it's fundamental self-respect, a prerequisite for interacting with others ethically and sustainably, without resentment building beneath the surface. Existentialist thought further deepens this understanding through the lens of authenticity. Philosophers like Sartre emphasized radical freedom and the responsibility to create meaning through our choices. Living authentically means acting in alignment with our chosen values and commitments, not merely conforming to external pressures or societal expectations. Saying yes, out of obligation rather than genuine choice, is an act of bad faith, a denial of our freedom. Each time we say yes when we mean no, we chip away at our authentic self. We live according to others' scripts, not our own. Conversely, choosing no based on our values is a powerful assertion of our existence, a declaration that I choose this path, these priorities. It requires courage, the courage to define ourselves rather than be defined by others' demands. The classical virtue of temperance or moderation also plays a crucial role. Temperance is about finding balance and avoiding excess in all things. Overcommitment, the inability to say no, is a form of excess, an excess of agreeableness, an excess of activity, often leading to the detrimental excess of stress and burnout. It demonstrates a lack of self-control regarding our commitments. Practicing temperance in our commitments means recognizing our limits and honoring them. It involves discerning between opportunities that align with our core purpose and those that are merely distractions or obligations fueled by external pressure. Saying no becomes an act of moderation, preserving our energy for what truly nourishes our soul and fulfills our chosen responsibilities effectively. So, how do we translate this philosophical understanding into practical action? How do we actually say no effectively, respectfully, and without crippling guilt? The first step is clarity. Understand your own priorities, values, and limits before you are asked. What is truly essential for your well-being, your goals, your core responsibilities? Knowing your yes makes your no easier. When you are clear about what you are committed to, your health, your family, your key projects, your necessary rest, it provides a solid foundation for declining requests that conflict with these priorities. Your no isn't arbitrary. It stems from a prior commitment to something you have already deemed essential. When declining, strive for clarity and kindness. A simple direct "no, I'm unable to commit to that right now" is often sufficient. Avoid lengthy, convoluted excuses. Over-explaining can sound defensive, invite negotiation, or inadvertently disrespect the person asking by suggesting their request wasn't worthy of a straightforward answer. Honesty, delivered gently, is usually best. You can soften the no by expressing appreciation for the offer, "Thank you for thinking of me," or suggesting an alternative if appropriate. "I can't do X, but perhaps Y would work." Or, "I can't help now, but maybe check back next month." This shows goodwill without compromising your boundary. The key is maintaining the core refusal if the request genuinely overextends you. It's also crucial to recognize manipulation tactics, however subtle. Guilt tripping, "But I thought you cared." Excessive flattery before a request, minimizing the effort involved, "It'll only take a minute." Or creating false urgency can pressure you into saying yes. Awareness of these tactics helps you respond based on your capacity, not emotional coercion. Assertiveness is key, distinct from aggression. Aggression violates others' boundaries. Assertiveness protects your own while respecting others. It's about stating your position clearly, calmly, and confidently, without apology for having needs and limits. It requires practice, especially if you're accustomed to prioritizing others' needs automatically, but it is a skill that can be developed. This leads us to the internal work required. Saying no externally often requires first overcoming internal barriers, primarily guilt and the fear of disapproval. Ask yourself, where does this guilt come from? Is it a realistic assessment of the situation, or a learned response based on past experiences or societal conditioning about needing to be endlessly helpful? Acknowledging the fear of disapproval is also vital. Will saying no genuinely damage a healthy relationship? Often, relationships built on mutual respect can withstand boundaries. If a relationship depends solely on your constant accommodation, it might be worth reevaluating its foundation. True connection allows for individual needs and limits. Clarifying your personal values is foundational to this internal work. What truly matters to you? Health, family, creative expression, contribution to a specific cause, honesty. When your no aligns with a deeply held value, it feels less like deprivation and more like integrity in action. It becomes easier to stand firm when you know why you are setting the boundary. Practice helps desensitize the discomfort. Start small. Say no to low-stakes requests where the consequences of refusal are minimal. Notice that the world doesn't end. The other person usually understands or finds an alternative. Each small success builds confidence for setting boundaries in more significant situations, reinforcing your right to manage your own resources. Remember, setting a boundary is not a rejection of the person, but a refusal of a specific request that doesn't align with your current capacity or priorities. Framing it this way, both internally and sometimes externally, I value our relationship, but I simply don't have the bandwidth for this task right now, can reduce feelings of guilt and interpersonal friction. The Stoic practice of premeditation can be helpful here. Consider situations where you might be asked to overcommit. Mentally rehearse saying no calmly and clearly. Visualize potential responses and how you would handle them while maintaining your composure and boundary. This preparation reduces anxiety and improves your ability to respond effectively in the moment. Ultimately, the power of no lies in its ability to create space. Space for rest, space for reflection, space for the activities and relationships that genuinely nourish you, space to pursue your authentic goals. Without this space, life becomes a frantic reaction to external stimuli rather than a deliberate creation aligned with inner wisdom. Boundaries are the guardians of this essential space. Consider the cumulative effect of countless small yeses made out of obligation. Each one might seem insignificant, but together they weave a net of commitments that can trap us, diverting us from our chosen path. Learning to say no is like learning to cut the threads of this net, freeing ourselves to navigate by our own internal compass, guided by reason and value. This act of boundary setting fosters healthier relationships built on honesty rather than unspoken resentment. When people know they can trust your yes, because your no is also clear and respected, it builds a foundation of authentic connection. It allows for genuine generosity, given freely, rather than obligatory service performed with hidden reluctance, strengthening bonds. The wisdom traditions remind us that our inner state influences our outer actions. Cultivating self-respect internally, understanding our worth as taught by Kantian principles, makes it more natural to protect our boundaries externally. When we value ourselves, we instinctively guard our time and energy from being squandered or exploited, ensuring our resources serve our highest good. Applying existentialist courage allows us to embrace the responsibility that comes with freedom. Choosing no is choosing authenticity over conformity. It might feel isolating initially, like stepping off the well-trodden path, but it's the path towards a life defined by personal meaning and conviction, rather than passively accepting the roles others assign us. Temperance reminds us that no is not negative, it is discerning. It is the necessary counterbalance to yes. Like inhaling and exhaling, a life well lived requires both receptivity and refusal, engagement and withdrawal. Finding this rhythm, moderated by wisdom, prevents the burnout that comes from constant output without sufficient input or rest, maintaining equilibrium. We must also acknowledge that the ability to say no can be influenced by power dynamics and privilege. For those in marginalized or dependent positions, setting boundaries can carry greater risks. Recognizing this complexity doesn't negate the importance of boundaries, but calls for wisdom, strategy, and sometimes seeking support when asserting one's limits in challenging circumstances. Let's revisit the core message. Mastering no is an exercise in applied philosophy. It requires the Stoics' focus on essentials, the Kantian respect for self, the Existentialist's embrace of authentic choice, and the temperate avoidance of excess. It is not merely a social skill, but a spiritual and ethical practice fundamental to living a purposeful and balanced life. By learning to set boundaries wisely, we reclaim authorship of our lives. We move from being passively shaped by external demands to actively choosing how we engage with the world. This shift empowers us to direct our energy towards what truly aligns with our values, fostering not only personal well-being, but also enhancing our capacity for meaningful contribution. This process isn't about becoming rigid or unhelpful. It's about becoming discerning. It allows our yes to be more powerful, more genuine, because it comes from a place of conscious choice rather than unconscious obligation or fear. A thoughtful no paves the way for a wholehearted yes when the time and commitment are right. Consider the energy freed up by declining draining commitments. This energy can be reinvested into self-care, learning, deep work, or nurturing key relationships. Saying no to the peripheral allows us to say yes more fully to the core elements of a fulfilling life, preventing the slow depletion that leads to burnout and cynicism. The fear of missing out often fuels our inability to say no. We worry that declining an opportunity means closing a door forever. Ancient wisdom reminds us that true opportunity aligns with our purpose and capacity. Chasing every possibility leads to exhaustion. Focusing allows mastery and deeper engagement with what truly matters. Discernment trumps mere accumulation of experiences. Reflect on the physical and mental toll of consistent overcommitment. Headaches, fatigue, anxiety, resentment. These are often signals from our inner selves that our boundaries are being breached. Learning to heed these signals, interpreting them not as weaknesses but as calls for course correction, is part of developing boundary wisdom. Philosophy helps us understand these signals. Saying no can be an act of deep listening, listening to our own needs, our body's limits, our intuition, and the quiet voice of our values. In a noisy world that constantly demands our external attention, cultivating this internal listening is essential for navigating life with integrity and preventing the drift into misalignment and exhaustion. The practice requires ongoing vigilance and refinement. Setting boundaries isn't a one-time act but a continuous process of self-awareness, negotiation, and adjustment as circumstances change. What you could handle last year might differ now. Honoring your present capacity is crucial, demanding honesty with yourself and clear communication with others about your current limits. Remember the power of pausing. When faced with a request, especially one that triggers immediate guilt or pressure, give yourself permission to pause before responding. "Let me check my schedule. I need to think about that," or "Can I get back to you?" buys valuable time to consult your internal compass and priorities, rather than reacting impulsively. Compassion, both for yourself and others, is vital in this practice. Understand that setting boundaries might feel uncomfortable initially, and allow yourself grace. Also, recognize that others may react poorly due to their own conditioning or expectations. Approach interactions with kindness, but hold firm to the boundaries necessary for your well-being and integrity. In summary, the seemingly simple act of saying no is deeply interwoven with profound philosophical principles. It is about valuing your time and energy like the Stoics, respecting your intrinsic worth like Kant suggested, living authentically according to your choices as Existentialist urged, and practicing the moderation advocated by temperance. It's wisdom in action. Key takeaways include understanding your priorities before requests arise, communicating refusals clearly and kindly without over-justifying, recognizing manipulative tactics, practicing assertiveness grounded in self-respect, and doing the internal work to overcome guilt and fear by connecting boundaries to your core values. This holistic approach transforms no from a negative into a positive assertion of self. Embracing the power of no ultimately leads to a more intentional life. It allows you to conserve your precious resources for what truly matters, fostering deeper connections, enabling more meaningful work, and preserving the inner peace that comes from living in alignment with your authentic self. It is a cornerstone of building a resilient and fulfilling existence. So the next time you hesitate, caught between obligation and your own needs, remember the wisdom of the ages. Setting a boundary isn't just permitted, it's essential. How might your life transform if you began wielding the simple, powerful word no, not out of negativity, but as a tool of wisdom, self-respect, and authentic living? The choice ultimately rests with you.